Welcome to episode 31 of the Talking Friars podcast. It's Ben Fadden here, your host. No Jacob today. It is 12:47 a.m. and I am not tired yet, as the great Scott Van Pelt says. Uh, just came back from a trip to New York. We're going to recap this Red Series today, what happened in Cincinnati, give you a quick preview of what's going to go down this weekend in Philadelphia against Bryce Harper and the Philadelphia Phillies. The All-Star starters were revealed as well on Thursday night, and the Padres have one starter that I'm pretty sure you got all know who it is. But I will reveal those full All-Star starter rosters for you, and talk about that for a little bit. And then unveil the next guest on the podcast, which is a pretty big name for diehard Padre fans. So I think everyone's going to be excited for that. But first off, so let's just start off game one of this series. Padres end up winning this series 2-1 in this 3-game set in Cincinnati. Game one, Padres win it 5-4. This game was not rain shortened, unlike the second game of the series. This game, Jake Cronenworth hits that big triple. Machado has a sac fly. Pham has a sac fly. And then the big, Grisham had an RBI single for the fifth run of the game. But Pham, what I wanted to point out there, really, hits his ninth home run of the season on a fly ball to right field. He mentioned either it was to Kevin Acee of the Tribune, or another local beat writer. He was mentioning about how he's just barely gaining his strength back now. It's taken a while since, he had to recover from being stabbed in the back at a strip club in the off season. So it took a while to regain his strength back. He's working in the gym. Obviously, he's one of those gym rats, and he just works hard all the time. So just regaining that strength back, and so it was going to take time for him to progressively build up that strength and for it to really show in the game. So now I'm still not going to make an excuse. He's not going to make an excuse for his struggles early in the year. People wanted Pham traded or, like released or whatever. And I was obviously one of those people that believed in the guy. You saw his resume, how he played so well with the Cardinals, how instrumental he was with the Rays in 2019, along with Blake Snell in that postseason run. So I believed in the guy, and he's definitely showing it now. The power to the opposite field, like we saw against Cincinnati, like we saw with the leadoff homers at Petco Park in the last homestand. The strength is coming back, and so that's definitely something that has to make him happy. It has to make Padre fans happy, and it's definitely has shut up the Tommy Pham haters, if you will, because this guy's going to be at the top of the lineup until he stops hitting, and I don't foresee that being the case anytime in the near future. So props to Tommy Pham. Padres again win this game 5-4, 12 hits on the night compared to the Reds 8. The Reds made 2 errors, so compared to the Padres 0. So when you make more errors than the other team, usually the other team capitalizes on that in some fashion. This game ended up being a bullpen game. Going in, it was Blake Snell supposed to be on the mound, coming off that great Dodger start. But he got sick. He was under the weather. I believe it was food poisoning. And so he just didn't pitch. He didn't feel well. He wasn't up to it. And you can't blame him. So the bullpen had to step up, and they did pretty well. After Stammen, Ramirez, and Chris Matt gave up at least 1 run each through the first 4 and a third inning. 4 and a third innings. Stammen gave up 1 run, Ramirez 1 run, Chris Matt 2 runs. Austin Adams, Pierce Johnson, Drew Pomerantz, Emilio Pagan, and then Mark Melancon all combined to give up 0 earned runs. So that's exactly what Larry Rothschild wants. That's exactly what the organization wants, is their bullpen to step up in those games. And it's pretty much done that all year. So it's something to commend. That it started ever since Adrian Morehone went down. Or actually, here let's zoom or go back to last year in the playoffs. when they needed a bullpen game in game 3 of the NL wildcard series against the Cardinals. Stammen started that game, 9 pitchers, I believe, and they won that game. Now you can fast forward and carry it on to this year. Adrian Morejon gets hurt early in the year in Texas. Stammen comes in and the bullpen pitches well. There's, whenever Lamet's gotten hurt, seems like the bullpen stepped up. So that was the theme of Tuesday night. And so just you got to commend the bullpen for the work that they put in this year and how valuable Craig Stammen has been. He's the one that's really starts that engine in terms of these long bullpen type games. And then the rest of the bullpen all the way through to Mark Melancon. So Padres win this one 5-4, improved to 47 and 32. Moving on to Wednesday's game, Wednesday, June 30th. The Padres won this one in a rain-shortened game. There was a lot of rain on Wednesday around the big leagues. I went to the Yankee Angels game at Yankee Stadium. There was 2 rain delays in this game. We were there till past 1 in the morning to see Aroldis Chapman choke a 4-run lead in the 9th inning to a pretty average Angels offense. So that was fun to see. Anyway, but back to the Padres. They win this one 7-5 in only 5 innings. But a lot of offensive action happened in these 5 innings. Will Myers homered, Trent Grisham homered, Fernando Tatis Jr. homered, Votto homered for the Reds, and then Trent Grisham comes in and gives that what ended up being the game-winning runs, hitting a grand slam to make it 7-5 in the top of the 5th before the game ended up being shortened after those 5 innings or 6 innings, because of the rain. As for the starter in this game, Joe Musgrove, I mentioned on the pregame thoughts prior to Thursday's game, it was big. The rain shortened this game, kind of helped the Padres because they had pretty much the whole bullpen used in the series opener in Cincinnati because of Blake not starting that game. So, only using one reliever in this game, Tim Hill, that definitely kind of reset the bullpen, gave them another off day. And Joe Musgrove, he gave up 5 earned runs. He just definitely was not solid. Part of that might have been due to the weather. So I wouldn't put too much into it, just simply because he's been an all-star pitcher this year. Jacob and I lobbied for him earlier in the week on our all-star episode. You can look at that on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, episode 30. We've advocated for him to be in the all-star game. He's definitely showed it. So having one rough start, even Jacob deGrom today had a rough start last night since 12:55 in the morning. deGrom had a rough start against the Braves, gave up 3 runs in the first inning. So that proved that he's human. But back to Musgrove. So I just wouldn't chalk it up to too much of anything. And I expect him to bounce back. He pitched great against the Dodgers. Dodgers are a better team than the Reds are. So again, just we'll move on from that start from Joe Musgrove. 5 earned runs. Moving on, Thursday, July 1st, series finale. Padres were looking to sweep this game, and they couldn't do it. It looked good all the way till that 9th inning. A lot of scoring, pretty early for the Padres. They were down 2-0 early, but in the 5th, Profar doubled, scored Machado. Tommy Pham singled in 2 runs. The Padres capitalized on an error, a throwing error by the third baseman. So Manny Machado scored on that one. Kyle Farmer. This is where it got ugly in the 9th inning for Melancon. Kyle Farmer hits the game tying solo home run, and then Kyle Stevenson, with the bases loaded, gets a single, and Jonathan India scores the go-ahead run. Just not a great outing whatsoever from Melancon. He'll admit that. It seemed like he just couldn't really, just couldn't get guys out. Obviously, just wasn't really consistent. In the strike zone. That's his 4th blown save of the season. He's going to be an all-star this year. best closer in the National League this year, arguably in the league this year. So I'm not saying like this is going to be a theme, blowing saves, but it does seem to happen every so often for Melanson. Um, how many pitches did he throw? 28 pitches, 16 of them were strikes. So that's 16 to 12 strike to ball ratio. That's not terrible, but it's also not great either. Um, you know, as your closer, you definitely don't want to walk two guys in that ninth inning, because that obviously loaded the bases and that set up that walk off. So Melanson will be better. It's kind of like one of those Joe Musgrove things where just you kind of have to just move on from it. Everyone's gonna have bad games, bad innings, whatnot. Um, these guys are all human as well, obviously. So even Jacob deGrom gives up runs every once in a while, and it seems like the last couple of starts he's actually given up multiple runs. So maybe he's more human than we thought. No, he's right on track to win his third Cy Young in 4 years. It'll be interesting to see where Darvish ends up in that, Musgrove ends up in that as well. But as for Wednesday, just kind of a frustrating end to it. Padres obviously had the lead going into the ninth. Again, the Farmer homer, the Stevenson walk-off down the line. Hard contact all around. It wasn't like these things were kind of bloop hits. So Melanson did get hit hard. But one of those things, like I said, where you kind of just have to move on. And you're confident that he's going to do better when all things are said and done consistently, the rest of the season. Moving on. So Padres, that was a series kind of recap there. Take 2 out of 3. They improved to 49, or they're 49 and 34 right now. They sit 2.5 games back of the Giants as we record this. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. Obviously, coming off that great 9-1 homestand, winning this series. It seemed like yesterday where I was talking about how they hadn't won a series since like May 30th in Houston. But now all of a sudden they can't stop winning series. And so hopefully that trend continues in Philadelphia and in Washington to finish out the East Coast road trip. So Dodgers are 50 and 31. They're a half game back, so they're 2 games up on the Padres in the division. But the wild card, the real thing that we're going to be paying attention to down this stretch is not the wild card, really. It's going to be the division. Right now, as the wild card sits, it's the Dodgers would host that 1-game playoff game, and the Padres would be at Dodger Stadium playing them. The Cubs are the next team out in the wild card standings. They're right now 6 games back. The Nats are 7, Cincinnati's 7.5, who obviously the Padres just played. St. Louis 8.5. So a 6-game gap between the Padres and the Cubs, the next team to threaten them in that wild card. So I'm not saying to be relaxed or anything. It's not even the All-Star break yet, obviously, but the Padres are comfortably in that playoff picture right now. So the division, obviously, you can count the games back that they are in on 3/5 of your hand. So it's definitely a very, good sign that, considering where the Padres were, losing those series, getting swept by Colorado, going 1-5 on that road trip with that series in Queens with the Mets. Before that, losing that series, but they've turned it around. Obviously, sweeping the Dodgers was absolutely huge, and a big reason why they're right within striking distance of the first wild card spot and the division. The Giants have been playing the Diamondbacks, so it's not like, but again, the Padres just played the Diamondbacks, so it's not like my point is we both play them, obviously, all the 3 division teams, us, the Giants, the Dodgers, play the Diamondbacks the same amount of times, so there's no excuses there. So that's where the division sits. As we can go around the league a little bit here, the Central, Milwaukee is a 6.5 game lead on the Cubs. The Cubs, it was like a matter of weeks ago that they were in first place, and all the discussions came about of, oh, maybe they might keep their core of Bryant, Rizzo, and Baez and try to go one more run at this. But if they're going to be a wild card team, which they're not, I don't think, because it's going to be two of the three NL West teams. Um, the division's their only hope, really, and Milwaukee has that up right now at 49 wins. Um, Maybe they do end up trading a Chris Bryant or something, and who's been like an MVP candidate at least for the Cubs this year. Um, in the NL East, a lot of mediocre teams. Like the Mets are 41 and 36, so only 5 games over 500. If the Padres were in their division, they'd be 8 games up on them in the win column. So, and the Padres right now sit in third in our division. So that just tells you how competitive the NL West is, how unlucky the Padres are of being in the NL West right now, um, and how fortunate the Mets are. They've had so many injuries. They're 4-6 in their last 10. DeGrom lost the game in the series finale against the Braves in Atlanta. They go for the Subway Series, which should be exciting this weekend at Yankee Stadium. Um, so they're sticking around and they're treading water until their bigger guys come back, like Michael Conforto and Brandon Nimmo and guys like that. So that's the NL. The AL, Boston has a 3.5 game lead in first at 51 and 31. The Yankees are 41 and 39 going into that Subway Series hosting the Mets this weekend. A lot of people in New York, or I obviously I was at the Yankee game, like I said, on that Wednesday. Um, and there was, when Chapman gave up that 4-run lead, there was people chanting "Fire Boone." Some of those people on the field level that were still at Yankee Stadium at over past 1 a.m, like I was. Uh, it doesn't make sense, but New York fans are passionate, so and they're very reactionary. If you didn't know, but the Yankees just haven't. They entered the season as AL favorites easily. You could make an argument for the White Sox, but they're still a young team. The Yankees, they have Garrett Cole for his second year. It just Gary Sanchez is hitting now. Um, Corey Kluber and Jameson Taillon looked good at the start of the season. They're just stacked, right? The only question is health, and they were stacked on paper, but right now they're not playing to that, like Hal Steinbrenner said on Thursday afternoon. So that's a storyline right now to watch. They're 9 games back in the division. The AL Central, the White Sox, like I mentioned, they were one of the AL favorites. They've lived up to it at 48 and 32. They have a 5-game lead on Cleveland. And in the AL West, Houston, a closer race with Oakland, a 1.5-game lead on them. The Angels are 39 and 41. Again, the Trout injury is a big variable, or a big, factor in why they're under 500. But it seems like the same old story over and over and over again about this team. They have a lot of offense. They have generational talents. Trout, Ohtani, obviously, he's probably the AL MVP. Rendon, they have a lot of talent there, but the pitching is the problem, really. And Ohtani gives up 7 earned runs in the first inning at Yankee Stadium on Wednesday. The Angels are fortunate that they came back and won. But if Ohtani doesn't pitch well the rest of the year, they have no chance. So it's really that simple. Even if Trout comes back healthy and is able to play the rest of the year, it seems like he's going to come back after the All-Star break. Talking about the All-Star break, someone on the Padres who will not be participating in the All-Star break is because he will be at the game in Denver is Fernando Tatis Jr. Just like everyone thought, he is the starting shortstop in the All-Star game. If obviously, knock on wood, there's no injuries with him leading up to the Midsummer Classic in the middle of July. Today, Major League Baseball announced the American League and the National League starters. The reserves will be announced on Sunday before Sunday Night Baseball, the Subway Series, Yankees Mets in the Bronx, I believe. So stay tuned to see if Cronenworth and Melanson and Musgrove and Darvish and guys like that make it. Jacob and I had our prediction show, episode 30. Again, you can go find that on our YouTube channel and at wherever you get your podcasts. We had some predictions on who we think should be in that game. And again, that announcement will come Sunday. The American League. So here's the American League starters at first base. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. of the Toronto Blue Jays. He's been tremendous this year. He dropped a lot of his weight, and maybe that's has been a positive effect. The power definitely is not gone, and so props to him for putting in the work in the offseason. His teammate Marcus Semien signed a 1-year deal with Toronto. He will be at second base, coming off, coming from Oakland, where I think some people were surprised that Oakland didn't try to keep him more by giving him more money. But he's flourished in Toronto. George Springer, he hasn't been healthy, so he obviously wasn't going to start here or be anywhere near the All-Star team. But he is also a teammate of Vlad Jr.'s and Semien this year. Rafael Devers will start at third base for the Boston Red Sox. His teammate Xander Bogaerts will be right next to him at shortstop. There was a small, very minimal chance, I thought, going into the year that we could see that with Tatis and Machado. There's just too much competition and too much, seems like, favoritism towards Arenado and maybe Chris Bryant. Now, I'm not trying to say that they don't deserve it, because Nolan Arenado's well on his way to the Hall of Fame if he continues winning these Gold Gloves every year, and if he can just hit, have his road and home splits anywhere near close to each other. That just hasn't happened when he was with Colorado. So we'll see if that can change when he's with St. Louis. He's in his first year in a Cardinal uniform, and we'll get to see if he gets the start after I get through the AL. So Guerrero Jr. at first, Semien at second, Devers at third, Bogaerts at short, Salvador Perez, 2015 World Series champ with the Royals. He starts at catcher. Trout will not be playing in the All-Star game, I would expect, because he's not going to come back till after the All-Star game due to his calf injury, but he was voted in. So he's technically a starter. Aaron Judge was voted in as the second outfielder, and the third outfielder, which is kind of surprising, Teoscar Hernandez. Teoscar Hernandez is a great player, but there's other bigger names like Alex Verdugo, like a Michael Brantley, guys like that you assumed that would probably get more votes just based on their popularity and the bigger market teams that they play for, than Teoscar Hernandez, who probably the casual fan doesn't even know who he is, but he should know if they watch the All-Star game, because he has definitely emerged as an offensive threat in the middle of that Toronto lineup. Shohei Ohtani starting at designated hitter, not a surprise. I think he's leading the American League now in home runs, the MLB in home runs. He hit 2 home runs on Tuesday at Yankee Stadium, hit 1 on Monday at Yankee Stadium as well, before he only had 1 at bat on Wednesday because he pitched and exited 2/3 of an inning into the game. So Joe Madden had to use the DH. But nonetheless, great year offensively from Ohtani. Now, the plan for Ohtani in the All-Star game, I would think, is they're going to have him DH, give him 2 or 3 at-bats, probably 2 at-bats, and then maybe have JD Martinez DH after him, or another fielder that won't get in the field. And then they'll send Ohtani out, if the Angels allow it, obviously, to maybe close the game pitching the 9th or pitch sometime later in the game, just so that he can show off both things in front of a national audience. And I think that would be huge. They're comparing him obviously to Babe Ruth and guys like that because he can do both at a very high level. His ERA is now over 3 because of how it ballooned after that 7 earned run performance at Yankee Stadium this week. But he had an ERA under 3 this entire year before that start. So he's been great this year, deserves to be starting at designated hitter, and I wouldn't be surprised if he pitches as well. On to the National League, what is probably most of you guys care about. Freddie Freeman starting at first base, the reigning National League MVP after a great year last year. His team obviously fell one short win away from the World Series, losing in Game 7 to the Dodgers in the NLCS before the Dodgers obviously won the World Series. Adam Frazier, a little bit surprising here. Adam Frazier might not be a known name to casual fans. Maybe those casual fans voted for like an Ozzy Albies or something if they voted for this All-Star ballot. But he will start hitting over 300. He's been tremendous. Him and Cronenworth are probably the best all-around hitters at second base in the National League this year. And I think Cronenworth will get a bench spot. And if he doesn't, there's going to be a problem because he just has better overall numbers than the Max Muncy's of the world, the Ryan McMahons of the world, who will probably be the only All-Star representing the Rockies at their home field at Coors Field in July. But Adam Frazier, he's been great this year. Not much attention on him because of who he plays for. Pittsburgh is obviously rebuilding. They're terrible. They're going to be terrible for the foreseeable future because this rebuild that Ben Cherington is going to do takes time. And we saw that it took time with the Boston Red Sox. Nolan Arenado starting at third base over Chris Bryant, the NL, probably one of the NL MVP favorites. When you don't, include like a Jacob deGrom, Tatis and him are up there. Castellanos and Winker are up there as well. But he gets the start. I don't expect Manny to be in the All-Star game. I think it's going to be Justin Turner, Chris Bryant, and Nolan Arenado. But Manny's teammate, Fernando Tatis Jr., starting at shortstop, like I mentioned. He's just been tremendous this year. He's missed time with injuries, whether it was a subluxation or a non-injury, but he still went on the IL for having COVID earlier in the year when he contracted it, I believe. Maybe it was going from San Francisco to Colorado or when he went where he got in Colorado and he got it. I don't know, but he missed time. But the point is, he leads the National League in home runs, 26 of them, obviously homering once in this Cincinnati series. Tremendous year from Fernando so far. NL MVP of the Padres. If you had to pick a team MVP, NL MVP right up there with DeGrom. I think he should be the NL MVP because I think it should go to a position player. Cy Young is the pitcher's MVP, and that obviously would go to Jacob deGrom. No disrespect to deGrom. He's a Hall of Famer. He's probably arguably the best pitcher I've seen in my lifetime. Just tremendous. It's just so weird and so fascinating to see his velocity increase as his age goes up. It's usually the other way around. But just props to Fernando, props to deGrom. Buster Posey gets the start at catcher. He's had a tremendously great bounce back year compared to 2019. Obviously did not play in 2020 due to virus concerns, wanting to be at home with his family. Completely understandable. But I think he's well rested, and that might be one of the reasons why he, is, turning back the clock per se. It seemed like Joey Bart was almost ready to take over, and Buster Posey said not so fast. So good for him. Ronald Acuna Jr., Jesse Winker, and Nick Castellanos are the three voted on outfielders. I definitely would agree with all three of those. You can make an argument for Juan Soto just because of the name and the All-Star game. You want to promote the best players as well as the players that have performed the best, in the first half of this year. And so I think they did a great job. The voters, all of us who voted, did a great job of that because Castellanos and Winker deserve to be starting. They're both hitting over 300. Tremendous numbers at the top of that order for the Reds team. The only reason why they're anywhere near 500 is because of those two guys, really. Yeah, it's just that simple at the top of the order. And Ronald Acuna Jr., he's definitely up there, probably third in the NL MVP race behind deGrom and Tatis. You could obviously you could swap whoever you want, deGrom and Tatis, either one or two in the MVP race. But Acuna definitely deserves to be starting here in the outfield. Again, Castellanos and Winker have been great. They were two locks in left and right, it seems like, and then Acuna will be in center. The bench outfield will probably involve, probably a Juan Soto just because of the name recognition. You could go a Bryce Harper. He's had a pretty good year. I know people want to say he's overrated, but I actually think he's underrated. He's obviously if you ever have been around me, he's my favorite player, even though he doesn't play for the Padres, but just been following him since he was like a teenager. He's just an underrated guy, an underrated player. that people want to really just to be poop on him, because for some reason I think that if he doesn't play for them, they hate him. Because he's going to come up and hit a big home run off of you, like he did against the Mets, like last week, I think. Um, and he's not afraid to show his personality. Um, so here, in fact, to show, let's look up Harper's numbers this year. Let's see. In his age 28 season, he's hitting 275, 13 home runs, and 897 OPS. That's a pretty solid season. I know he's getting paid a lot of money, $330 million to be exact, over 13 years. So some Phillies fans might want him to put up Tatis numbers, but he is getting up there in age. He's still, it seems like he's been in the league for 2 decades and he's only 28 years old. But he's consistent. He plays essentially every day. He's like Machado and Hosmer, wants to be out there all of the time. And so I think he will be in the All-Star game. So I think Soto and Harper are two guys to look for to be reserves or to DH, to be quite honest. Jacob deGrom, he probably will be starting for the National League in this game. Jacob and I couldn't really figure out who would start for the American League on the mound. It would be interesting for Ohtani to start, but I think they'll just DH him at first, and then have him come in the bullpen. So it could be, a Lance Lynn. It could be a Garrett Cole, if you want to name a bigger name on the mound, matched up with DeGrom, since there's not going to be a DeGrom-Cole matchup this weekend because DeGrom pitched in the series finale in Atlanta. You could do that. So stay tuned for that. But those are your all-star starters. Again, from the American League, Vlad Jr. at first, Semien at second, Devers at third, Bogarts at short, Salvi Perez at catcher, Trout, Judge, and Teoscar Hernandez in the outfield. Ohtani DHing. There will be a change in that outfield because Trout is hurt. In the National League, Freeman at first, Frazier at second, Arenado at third, Tatis at short, Posey at catcher, Acuna, Winker, and Castellanos in the outfield, and no DH, obviously, for the National League, but DeGrom's probably starting on the mound if the Mets allow it. So that's your episode for today. One more thing, though, before we go. Matt Vasgersian of MLB Network, former play-by-play host or voice of the San Diego Padres, will be joining me on the podcast later today, since it's 1:20 in the morning. Matt Vasgersian, that should be out in the afternoon before the Phillies series. I could give you the quick pitching matchups for that real quickly. Chris Paddock will start the series opener at Citizens Bank Park later today, Friday, July 2nd at 3:05 Pacific time against Zach Wheeler. Saturday, Yu Darvish will be on the mound. The Phillies have not yet announced a starter. Sunday, TBD for both teams. So that's the pitching matchup so far. Thanks for listening. Again, stay tuned for that Matt Vasgersian interview. And until then, go Padres.